I'm the spoon that fed Mandela's last supper in prison. Release of Nelson Mandela, 1990. I was born in the cold embrace of a factory sometime in the late 1950s, one among thousands, identical and unremarkable. My shine was pristine then, my metal unblemished by the weight of history that would eventually bend into my form. I remember little of those early days, boxed in darkness, shipped across distances, handled by indifferent hands. My purpose was simple: to serve, to feed, to be forgotten. In 1964, I found myself in a government warehouse in Cape Town, South Africa, sorted into a bin of standard-issue prison items. The air there was heavy with dust and the metallic scent of new locks and chains. I was assigned to Robben Island, that notorious limestone fortress rising from the cold Atlantic waters, just 7 miles from the shores of Cape Town, but worlds away from freedom. I still remember the day I was placed in his hand, February 1964. They had brought him here after the Rivonia trial, prisoner 46664. A tall man with steady hands and eyes that seemed to look beyond the grey walls surrounding us, Nelson Mandela. Even then, there was something in his touch that distinguished him, a gentleness that seemed incongruous with his surroundings, a dignity that the harsh prison system had failed to crush. "You'll eat with this for the duration of your sentence," the warden had said, dropping me onto a metal tray alongside a thin portion of porridge. I felt the warmth of Mandela's palm as he picked me up, examined my ordinary form and nodded slightly. He didn't know then that I would become one of his few constant companions for the next 27 years. That I would touch his lips 3 times a day, every day, through seasons of hope and despair, through illness and health, through the slow, grinding battle against an unjust system. In those early years, I helped him consume the meager prisoner rations, plain porridge, sparse, vegetables, occasionally beans. I noticed how he would eat methodically, with the same measured pace, whether the food was barely edible or, on rare special occasions, slightly more substantial. Through me, he tasted both the bitterness of captivity and the determination to survive it. Years passed. The guards changed, prisoners came and went, but he remained, and so did I, growing worn together, our surfaces dulled by time, yet somehow maintaining an inner strength that could not be diminished by external circumstances. By the mid-1970s, my once smooth surface had begun to wear. A small dent near my handle, a slight bend in my bowl, physical manifestations of passing time. Mandela's hands had changed too, roughened by years of breaking limestone in the prison quarry under the merciless sun. I felt the calluses on his fingers each time he gripped me, silent testimony to labor meant to break his spirit, but which somehow failed to do so. The prison routine rarely varied. Breakfast at 5:30 a.m., thin porridge that I would scoop, delivering sustenance that was never enough. Lunch at midday, often beans or boiled vegetables that slid across my surface. Dinner at 4 p.m., more of the same, consumed in a cell measuring 8 feet by 7 feet. Between meals, I would rest on a small shelf, watching, listening, bearing. Witness, in those concrete corridors and cramped cells, I observed how Mandela transformed imprisonment into a university of resistance. From my place on his tray, I saw him writing letters with stubby pencils, drafting legal arguments, and creating correspondence that would somehow find its way beyond these walls to continue the struggle outside. I watched as he engaged with guards, some brutal, some unexpectedly human, gradually winning small victories through unwavering dignity. Nkosi Sikelel iAfrika, I would hear him hum sometimes, the melody of what would one day become part of South Africa's national anthem, sung softly under his breath while using me to consume another bland meal. The guards didn't understand what he was preserving through these quiet acts of cultural defiance. In 1976, news of the Soweto uprising reached us. I felt his hands tremble slightly as he held me that evening, his meal barely touched. "The children," he whispered to his cellmate, "they are carrying the struggle now." I witnessed how he processed grief, contained, channeled, transformed into even deeper resolve. Through winter nights when the cell temperature plummeted and summer days when heat made the cramped space nearly unbearable, I remained with him. When illness struck and food became difficult to swallow, I carried smaller portions. When political developments brought moments of hope, I felt his grip strengthen. Together, we marked the rhythm of days that stretched into decades, each meal a reminder of survival, each use an act of perseverance. By the 1980s, I had become an extension of his hand, worn to the specific contours of his grip. My metal had darkened with age, my edges smoothed by thousands of uses. The prison authorities had replaced many items over the years, blankets, uniforms, plates, but somehow I remained perhaps too insignificant to warrant replacement. Perhaps by some oversight of fate that kept me as his constant companion. Robben Island had changed gradually. International pressure had improved some conditions, though freedom remained elusive. Mandela was now permitted more books, more letters, more visits. From my vantage point on his tray, I witnessed conversations with younger political prisoners who arrived with fresh news of the struggle, their eyes wide with disbelief that they were sharing meals with the man who had become a global symbol of resistance. "We stand on the shoulders of those who came before us," he told a young activist one day in 1985, "stirring a thin soup with my worn form. And those who come after us will stand on ours. What matters is that we keep standing." I helped him eat, while he educated these newcomers, turning the prison into a school of political thought, a crucible of leadership. The limestone dust that had once coated his fingers had been replaced by ink stains from writing his secret autobiography on thin paper that would eventually be smuggled out. Meals became classrooms, and I was present for every lesson. December 1988 brought his 70th birthday. The world outside celebrated while inside, his dinner remained the same prison fare. Yet something had shifted. Guards who once barked orders now sometimes said please and thank you. Officials who had treated him as nameless now addressed him as Mr. Mandela. The system that had tried to diminish him was beginning to bend to his immovable dignity. In early 1989, I noticed how officials began coming to his cell, not with orders, but with questions, with proposals. Negotiations had begun. The meals continued, breakfast, lunch, dinner, but now they were interspersed with meetings where I would rest unused as discussions about South Africa's future took place across the same table where I had served countless bland meals. I felt his energy change during these months, not with impatience, but with the careful, measured consideration of a man who understood that after decades of waiting, each step toward freedom must be taken with wisdom rather than haste. "We have climbed one hill," he told a fellow prisoner, using me to emphasize his point, "but there are many more ahead." February 10th, 1990. The air on Robben Island felt different that morning, charged with anticipation. I was placed on his breakfast tray as usual, but the routine that had defined our relationship for 27 years was about to end. Mandela ate slowly, deliberately, his mind clearly elsewhere, perhaps already navigating the challenges that awaited beyond these walls. The world had transformed during his imprisonment. Leaders had risen and fallen, nations had been born, technologies had evolved. Yet through my simple form, he had maintained one small constant, the basic human act of nourishment, performed with unwavering dignity regardless of circumstances. 4. His final prison meal. The fare was nothing special, the same porridge, the same bread. No ceremony marked this momentous threshold. As he lifted me one last time, I felt the weight of our shared history. I had touched his lips when he first learned of his mother's death, when he received news of his son's fatal car accident, when he heard that his wife Winnie had been banished to Brantford. I had been there when he was offered conditional release in 1985 and refused to abandon his principles for freedom. "Tomorrow," a guard said, standing at the open cell door, "you'll be eating with different utensils, Mr. Mandela." He smiled slightly, running his thumb along my worn handle. "This spoon has served me well," he replied. "Sometimes the most ordinary things become sacred through faithful use." That afternoon, he packed his few possessions, letters, books, papers that contained the seeds of a new constitution. I expected to be left behind, my purpose fulfilled. Instead, he wrapped me carefully in a handkerchief and placed me among his belongings. Perhaps he understood that I was more than metal, that I had become a vessel of memory. The next day, February 11th, 1990, he walked through the prison gates, and the world watched as he raised his fist in triumph, his step steady. Despite the years of confinement, I traveled with him into that bright, clamorous freedom, a silent witness to the moment when persistence overcame oppression. In the years that followed, through negotiations, elections, and his presidency, I remained in a drawer in his Houghton home. Sometimes, during quiet moments, he would take me out and hold me briefly, perhaps remembering how the longest journey begins with small, consistent acts of dignity. I am just a spoon, an object of humble purpose, but I carried nourishment. To a man who changed a nation, I'm a reminder that freedom can be forged through thousands of ordinary moments of grace, that resistance sometimes looks like simply continuing to eat, to think, to live with integrity, one day, one meal at a time. In the end, it was never about the food I carried, but about the spirit that could not be imprisoned, even after 27 years. I am worn and bent now, but like the man whose lips I touched, I endure as testimony that what is forged in hardship often serves the highest purpose.